Most people aren't afraid of failing, they're terrified of being normal. We're told that a quiet life is a wasted one, but what if that obsession with being extraordinary is exactly what's keeping you stuck? It's time to kill the ego and rediscover the magic in the average. We are living in a strange time where having a roof over your head, a stable job, and a quiet weekend feels like a failure. We scroll through social media and see 20-year-old millionaires, world travelers, and people who seem to have cracked the code of life. Suddenly, your own life feels small. You look at your routine and you don't see stability, you see a trap. This is the fear of being average, and it is one of the most quiet, painful anxieties of our generation. The problem isn't that your life is bad. The problem is that we have been conditioned to believe that being normal is a death sentence. We've turned the word average into an insult. We think that if we aren't standing out, if we aren't disrupting an industry or becoming famous, then we don't truly exist. This pressure creates a constant noise in the back of your mind that whispers, "Is this it? Is this all there is?" But here's the truth that most people miss. The fear of being average is rarely about the quality of your life. It is almost always about your ego. It's about the gap between who you actually are and that extraordinary person you think you're supposed to be. When you focus entirely on being special, you stop focusing on being present. You start treating your current life like a waiting room for a better one that hasn't arrived yet. Think about the last time you felt truly behind. Was it because you lacked something essential, or was it because you saw someone else with something shiny? We often mistake a lack of fame for a lack of meaning. We've been taught that if a moment isn't content, it didn't happen. If a career isn't a calling, it's a waste of time. This mindset turns your daily life into a burden rather than a gift. The danger of a stable life isn't the routine itself. There is actually something beautiful about knowing where your next meal is coming from and having people who love you. The real danger is when that stability turns into a shield. We use our normal lives as an excuse to stop growing. We tell ourselves we are being realistic because we are afraid to try something new and look foolish doing it. We settle for a comfortable boredom because it's safer than the risk of being a beginner again. We often get stuck in this middle ground where we are too comfortable to change, but too ambitious to be happy. It's a heavy weight to carry. If you're finding this perspective helpful and want to explore more ways to navigate these modern pressures, feel free to join our community by subscribing. We're all trying to figure out how to live better, and having you here makes the conversation more meaningful. To move past this fear, we have to look at what average really means. If average means having a job you enjoy, a few good friends, and the time to enjoy a sunset, then average is actually quite wonderful. The world wants you to believe that you need more to be happy, but more is a moving target. You can never reach it. The moment you get what you thought would make you, quote, extraordinary, the goalposts move again. The irony is that the people we admire most, the ones who truly lived extraordinary lives, often weren't trying to be famous. They were just deeply, intensely curious about the world. They weren't afraid of the normal parts of life. They used them as a foundation to explore. They understood that you don't have to escape your life to make it better. You just have to change how you see it. We need to stop viewing our lives through the lens of a highlight reel. Your worth isn't determined by how much you stand out from the crowd. It's determined by how much you show up for your own life. When you stop running away from being average, you actually gain the freedom to become something much better, someone who is authentic. If we want to understand how to break out of this trap, we have to talk about the ego. Most of us think our ego is the part of us that feels confident or superior, but it's actually much sneakier than that. The ego is the voice in your head that is obsessed with how you appear to the rest of the world. It's the part of you that would rather stay miserable in a respectable job than take a chance on a passion where you might look like a total amateur. This is where the story of Anthony Bourdain becomes so important for anyone feeling stuck in a normal life. Bourdain wasn't born a global icon. For decades, he lived what many would call a standard, grueling life. He worked in hot kitchens, dealt with debt, and faced the repetitive grind of the culinary world. He was in his 40s before he ever became the person we remember today. But the reason he was able to transition from a normal chef to a legendary storyteller wasn't because he was chasing fame. It was because he was willing to go through what we call an ego death. He was willing to be a beginner at a time when most people are trying to settle into their comfort zones. The ego death is the most painful but necessary part of growing. It requires you to admit that you don't know everything. It forces you to stop caring if you look cool or successful to your neighbors or your old high school friends. Most of us are paralyzed by the fear of looking stupid. We have an idea for a business, a book, or a new hobby, but we immediately shut it down because we imagine the judgment of others. We think, what if I fail and everyone sees it? The ego tells us that it's better to be a successful person who is bored than a failed person who is trying. This is why so many people stay in the average trap. They use the word realistic as a weapon against their own potential. They say, I'm just being realistic about my mortgage, or I'm being realistic about my age. But usually realistic is just a fancy word for terrified. We are terrified that if we step outside our current identity, we won't have anything to lean on. We cling to our stable, normal lives, not because we love them, but because we are afraid of the void that exists outside of them. To get past this, you have to be willing to be bad at things. Think about the last time you tried something for the first time. It's uncomfortable, right? Your hands shake, you make mistakes, and you feel like an imposter. Most people feel that discomfort once and run back to their average life because it's where they feel like an expert. But the magic happens in that discomfort. When you allow your ego to die, when you stop caring about being the smartest or most successful person in the room, you finally become open to the world. Bourdain's success came because he was intensely curious. He didn't go into new countries acting like he knew everything. He went in as a student. He sat on plastic stools, ate street food he couldn't identify, and listened more than he talked. He allowed himself to be average in those moments so that he could learn something extraordinary. He showed us that the only way to escape the boredom of a normal life is to stop trying to protect your image. We often think that taking a risk means quitting your job and moving to a desert island, but that's rarely the case. Real risk is internal. It's the risk of being wrong. It's the risk of sharing an idea that might get rejected. It's the risk of admitting that you want more than what you currently have. When you hide behind a normal life, you are protecting your ego, but you are also starving your soul. You are trading your potential for a false sense of security. The ego loves the status quo because the status quo is predictable. But predictability is the enemy of a life well lived. If you know exactly what the next 20 years of your life will look like, you aren't living. You're just executing a script. To break that script, you have to be willing to look foolish. You have to be willing to fail, perhaps several times, just like Bourdain did before he found his true voice. The fear of being average is actually just the fear of being seen as less than. But once you realize that the opinions of others have no actual power over your happiness, the fear vanishes. You realize that being average is only a cage if you let it be. If you can use your stable life as a launch pad rather than a hiding place, you can explore the world with a sense of freedom that extraordinary people often lack. Building an extraordinary life doesn't mean you have to set your current world on fire. We often fall into the trap of thinking that to escape the average, we need a massive cinematic transformation. We imagine ourselves quitting our jobs on a whim, buying a one-way ticket to a remote country, or suddenly becoming a viral sensation. But real change, the kind that actually sticks and brings deep fulfillment, usually happens in the quiet spaces of the life you already have. It's about the shift from being a passive observer of your routine to being an active participant in your own curiosity. An extraordinary life is really just a series of ordinary moments lived with intention. When we fear being average, we are usually looking at the output of our lives, our job title, our salary, or how many followers we have. But fulfillment is found in the input. It's found in the small daily choices to be a little bit more courageous than you were yesterday. This is where the concept of small ego deaths comes back into play. You don't need to change your entire identity overnight. You just need to start making choices that your ego finds a little bit uncomfortable. Think about your daily routine. Most of us move through our day like we are on a conveyor belt. We take the same route to work, talk to the same 3 people, and eat the same meals. This predictability is what makes life feel average and dull. To break this, you have to introduce small moments of newness. This could be as simple as picking up a book on a subject you know nothing about, striking up a conversation with a stranger, or finally starting that creative project you've been talking about for 3 years. These aren't just hobbies, they are exercises in being a beginner. They are ways to prove to yourself that you are still capable of growth. The magic happens when you stop viewing your stable life as a prison and start seeing it as a luxury. Having a normal life actually gives you the greatest gift of all, the safety to fail. If you have a roof over your head and food on the table, you are in the perfect position to take risks. You can try a side business, you can learn to paint, or you can volunteer for a cause you care about without the pressure of it needing to succeed immediately. When you remove the pressure of having to be the best, you unlock the ability to be the most authentic. We have to redefine what it means to be successful. In our culture, success is often defined by how much space you take up in the world, how famous or wealthy you are. But a truly extraordinary life is defined by how much you see the world. It's about being present in the moment instead of constantly looking over your shoulder to see who is watching. When you are no longer afraid of being average, you stop performing for an invisible audience. You start doing things because they are interesting, not because they make you look good. This is the freedom that comes after the fear. When you realize that being normal is not a failure, the weight of the world lifts off your shoulders. You realize that you don't have to make it because you are already here. You are already living. The goal of life isn't to reach some peak where everyone cheers for you. The goal is to enjoy the climb, even the parts that are steep and exhausting. If you look back at the people who have truly inspired you, it's rarely because of their bank accounts. It's because of their spirit. It's because they kept a sense of wonder even when things were difficult. They were people who could find something fascinating in a simple conversation or a walk through a city. They didn't need to be extraordinary to have an extraordinary impact on the people around them. They just had to be willing to be themselves, fully and without apology. So, as you move forward, ask yourself, what would I do today if I wasn't afraid of looking average? What part of my life have I been neglecting because it doesn't seem impressive enough to share? Start there. Lean into the things that make you curious, even if they seem small. Build a life that feels good on the inside, rather than one that just looks good on the outside. When you do that, you'll find that the fear of being average disappears entirely, replaced by the quiet, steady hum of a life truly lived.